Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Hey now, what's going on? Thank you for tuning in today to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Bryan. Glad you can join me today. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's recovering from this past weekend. We just had, I know out here in the Bay Area where I'm located, we got rained on pretty much all Sunday. So wherever you are, hope you're staying dry, hope you're staying warm, and hope you're staying safe. I know this past weekend was a little glimpse of what life is going to be like when the pandemic is all said and done. It's nice to be getting back to normal. It's nice to be doing things we've done before this pandemic happened. I got my first vaccine. It's great to see everybody else get their vaccines out there. Shout out to Pfizer. I'm going to get my second vaccine in about a week. So I'm just very super excited about that and just super excited to be back to normal. But like I mentioned earlier, it's the GSMC Football Podcast. So you know what we're going to talk about. We're talking all about football, NFL football, college football. So if you love football, if you live, breathe, and eat football, if you're a leatherhead, if you love to put your hands in the dirt, get in a three-point stance and hit somebody, you've come to the right place. Today, we're going to be covering a lot regarding the NFL, especially the NFL draft. We got the 2021 NFL draft less than a week away. Now, experts say that the draft doesn't start till 3, but can we really trust those experts, and can we really trust those mock drafts that, how many, I don't know, but can we really trust those drafts? I'm not sure. NFL draft is going to be in person this year. How is that going to be different from last year? And it's also a hopeful day for a lot of people. And there's potentially big-time trades going to be happening. We're also going to talk about how the draft is a gamble, how maybe some players don't pan out, and how we can find gems in the later rounds. And we're also going to talk about the new rule changes in the NFL as well. In the third segment, we're going to talk about the number changes and what the GOAT said about it and how that's going to affect the game. And stick around to the end. I'm going to give you my reasons why the NFL is going to be getting back to normal and how that's great for people like you and me to go back to the stands at a safe measure and a safe caution, and how it's going to be great for the games. I'm Bryan. Glad you can be with me. Glad you can be with us. It's the GSMC Football Podcast. Let's get straight into it, shall we? Okay. We got the 2021 NFL Draft coming up this Thursday. I'm so excited, and I hope you can hear in my voice how excited I am. It's going to be a hopeful day. It's going to be a hopeful day for a lot of people, for these franchises picking their next great generation talents, for these fans hoping that maybe this year will be the year that we get that franchise quarterback or their Hall of Fame running back. And it's going to be exciting for and hopeful for all these players and hopeful for all these families. This day, this draft day, this weekend is a combination and a culmination of all these players' hard work, determination, resiliency to get to this point in their young football careers. It's waking up early at 5 a.m. in the morning and doing workouts and going to school and going to class and going to practice. It's the whole culmination and the whole combination of all their work, all their effort builds up into one day, and it's great. It's a lot of dreams will become a reality on this day. Now, the reality is, of the 2021 NFL Draft, there's a lot of talk about the quarterbacks, especially at the top of the draft. A lot of mock drafts have been put out, and a lot of talk among the top picks, specifically quarterback talk. Now, when we look at mock drafts in general, we have to put our blinders on and we have to know which is a smokescreen or not. Now, when I talk about smokescreens, I'm talking about who can you trust and who you can't trust. What teams are throwing lies out there to try to deceive people. That's what I'm talking about, smokescreens. Because at the end of the day, it's a business and they want to get ahead when it comes to the NFL. NFL franchises want to get ahead, and for them to get ahead, they're going to have to lie. I'm going to say this a lot. NFL draft is lying season. Draft-wise, it's lying season. Now, everybody who watches football always talks about the quarterback. Specifically, with these quarterbacks, in the 2021 draft, I look at 5 to 7 quarterbacks. I look at Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson, Zach Wilson out of BYU, Justin Fields out of Ohio State University, Trey Lance out of North Dakota State University, and Mac Jones out of Alabama. Now, those quarterbacks are going to be the first 5 quarterbacks probably taken off the board within probably the first 15 picks. All those 5 quarterbacks have strengths and they have weaknesses. Let's get straight into it. The Jaguars are picking first, and they have a new regime with Urban Meyer at the head coach and Trent Baalke, former 49ers GM, at the general manager position. And all the talking heads on ESPN, NFL Network, ABC, NBC, Sports Center, all these people are saying that Trevor Lawrence is going to be picked at number 1 position in this draft. Okay, that makes sense. He might be the best quarterback in this draft. But there's a consensus at number 2 I don't think is maybe realistic. There's a chance that after Trevor Lawrence is taken at number 1 for Jacksonville, the New York Jets are going to take Zach Wilson at 2. Now, is that a possibility? Yes, it is, but I'm going to tell you why I think it's not a possibility. I don't think it's a possibility because, A, I don't know if you could trust Zach Wilson, a 1-year starter from tiny Draper, Utah, to thrive in the big city of New York City. I look at it like this. The Jets have one of the worst rosters in the NFL, arguably. They arguably have no talent on their team. So you're going to tell me a team who just shipped out their star quarterback to Carolina is going to bring in an undersized QB who has to play right away? I don't see that working. I see whoever goes to number 2 is going to be set up for failure. I just, plain and simple, I really do. Now, number 3. The 49ers made a really interesting move. The 49ers picked number 3. They made a really interesting move, though. They moved from 12 to 3. Now, they basically used a lot of draft capital to move up from 12 to 3. They pretty much traded 4 draft picks, 3 number 1s, and a future 3rd. What does that mean? What does that mean the 49ers are looking for? Well, in my opinion, the 49ers are looking for a QB, and especially they're looking for a dual-threat QB. Any one of these guys who I just mentioned, Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Lance, or Jones, they will wind up being successful on this team. They will wind up being successful because they have a great group of core guys around them, especially on the defense and offensive side. They have core values, and they will have the ability to learn and the ability to develop. Now, usually the top prospects are the best players on their team. This isn't the case because the 49ers have a great roster that is ready to win now. They have a window right now from 5 to 10 years, and that's their Super Bowl window. If they draft a guy who is elite, who will become a Hall of Famer, who will become a transcendent player, that window is going to change from 5 to 10 to 20 to 30 years. That's just how good they are right now. We've seen it. When healthy, when all the guys are together, when you have George Kittle healthy, when you have Nick Bosa healthy, when you have Fred Warner healthy, when you have Drake Greenlaw, when you have all their guys healthy and ready to go, this team is elite, and it proved it back in 2019, and they're going to prove it this year. I guarantee it. If they're healthy, they're going to be competing for another Super Bowl. Now, they traded 3 picks for a number 1 pick. They traded essentially 4 picks for 1 decision. That's a major decision for this franchise. This can either hinder their franchise or it can either boost their franchise to the future to winning Super Bowls. This is a major decision for the San Francisco 49ers and for the front office of John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. If they don't get the right decision, they might lose their jobs. I'm just stating flat out. This is a major decision between the franchise. Now, they said they wanted to keep Jimmy as their starter. They have Jimmy Garoppolo on the books for about $23 to $25 million. I'm not saying that he isn't the guy, but I'm saying that they think they can get better at every position. And if they're going to have to draft a quarterback within this draft. We can say many great quarterbacks who developed and who were MVPs in this league, they sat and they learned before they got their shot. I look at quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers. I look at quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes. I look at quarterbacks like Tom Brady, who just won the Super Bowl at the age 40. He sat, he developed, and he wasn't a starter his first year. And you know what? A quarterback that goes to San Francisco, I think that if he's able to develop, he can be a prime-time talent and a once-in-a-lifetime talent. That's how good this quarterback draft can be, and that's how good the opportunity in San Francisco is. Because honestly, we all need time to develop. We have to realize these kids, these are college kids coming out to the NFL draft. These aren't 30-year-old men. These are kids playing against grown men. If you're of age, do you remember what you were doing when you're 19, 20, or 21 years old? Do you remember what you were doing? I'll tell you what I was doing. I wasn't preparing to play grown men and prepare for the rest of my life to try to perform at my best. I was thinking about way many different things. I was thinking about school. I was thinking about parties. I was thinking about sports. I wasn't thinking about what I wanted to do as a career. I was a young, dumb kid who was trying just to see how the day was going to go. And honestly, that's how it's like with these young kids. We were all doing dumb stuff when we were 19, and honestly, there's going to be some dumb stuff that these kids are doing too. You got to think about it like you got to pump the brakes when it comes to these kids are going to be saviors of their franchises. They might one day, but you have to give them time to develop. It's really interesting to see what people think about these young quarterbacks when it comes to, oh, we got to throw them straight to the fire. Like, you really decipher who knows their stuff and who doesn't by the way they talk about quarterbacks. A person that I think you can trust when it comes to the lying season of the NFL draft, people get discouraged because they don't know who they can trust or who to look at for information or knowledge when it comes to a bunch of mock drafts or who's going to be taking number one or who's going to be taking this position. There are a lot of people you can look to for guidance and advice and who you think would be a good fit to listen to and who knows their stuff. One guy who I know knows his stuff, who lives, breathes, and eats football is a guy named Larry Krueger. You can trust this guy because he does pre and post for the 49ers. He delves into gritty details of the NFL draft. He breathes football. He does a daytime talk show, and all he talks about is football. He loves football, just like you and me, just like why you're here. He's a person you can trust. He's a former Canadian scout, and he had Rob Rang, part of FoxSports.com, and he's also part of Locked On Seahawks podcast. He had something really interesting to say about this upcoming draft. So Rob Rang came on his show, Krug Show podcast, and he had some really interesting stuff to say about the top 5 QBs. And he said something that might surprise you. Now, all these mock drafts are putting Lawrence and Wilson up there at the top positions. Well, he had Lawrence, Fields, Wilson, Lance, and Jones in that order. He said something really interesting about QBs being taken in the top 3. He dropped a great stat that might make me worried and a little worrisome about taking a quarterback within the top 3. He dropped a stat that 44 quarterbacks have been selected in the top 3 picks in the past 50 NFL drafts, and only 2 of them went on to win the Super Bowls with their respected teams that drafted them. 2 out of 44 quarterbacks went on to win Super Bowls with those teams. Those 2 quarterbacks were Troy Aikman and Peyton Manning. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not a math expert. But that ratio, only 2 out of 44 in the past 50 NFL drafts, selected in the top 3, and only 2 of them went on to win Super Bowls, that's concerning. If I'm a fan of a team drafting one of the top 3 positions, I'm concerned. Now, I'm a big 49ers fan. I'm born and raised in the Bay Area, and I'm a little concerned. I'm a little concerned because they traded 4 picks, 3 number 1 picks, and a future third for one position, for one guy. To me, that's alarming. To me, that shows that they're aggressive, but they're looking for one guy. Now, in my opinion, it's a team sport. One guy can't do it all, but they're looking for their person to lead them to the promised land and the person to actually get over their hump. And that's going to be a quarterback. It has to be a quarterback. It just shows me that they're unhappy with the quarterback they have now, Jimmy Garoppolo, and they're looking to get better at that position. Now, Rob Rang stated that the quarterback who's drafted by the 49ers will be in the best situation and will be better in his career long term compared to all these other quarterbacks. And I totally agree with him. I totally agree because these quarterbacks don't have time to develop, and whoever goes to the 49ers will have time to develop because they won't be thrown into the fire, because they're going to be a backup to Jimmy Garoppolo, because they're going to learn within the Kyle Shanahan system, and they're going to be able to be knowledgeable. Just look at the great quarterbacks who developed over the years who didn't start their first year. Aaron Rodgers didn't start his first year. Patrick Mahomes didn't start his first year. Tom Brady, who just won his 7th Super Bowl MVP, didn't start his first year. And look at the success that they had in their careers. So, in my opinion, whoever is going to the 49ers will be better off because they're going to be able to sit, they're going to be able to learn and observe and gain knowledge from not only one of the best coaches in the system when it comes to Kyle Shanahan, but one of the best play callers as well. He was asked, Rob Rang was asked, who the Niners are going to take at number 3, and everybody has their opinions, but he stated that the person who would best be able to fit the Niners' needs is Justin Fields, quarterback, Ohio State. Now, when I look at Justin Fields, I think of a dual-threat quarterback who has a lot of grit, who has major upside, who has the ability to roll out of the pocket and throw on the run and make moves and make plays with his feet. And Kyle Shanahan is looking for a guy who's not only accurate, who's able to pass on the run and roll out the pocket, but who's also smart and who's gritty and who knows the system. And honestly, I think that any one of these quarterbacks will be able to thrive in this system just because, A, they have a healthy squad around him who have talented players all around, who the roster is one of the best rosters in the league when healthy, and B, if you're able to sit and you're able to learn and gain knowledge from these guys around you and be able to use the weapons, eventually you will be successful in the NFL, because NFL is all about talent, and if you have talent on the field, no matter how much you have on your roster, you're going to be successful. Now, going back to Justin Fields, I think I see a Patrick Mahomes-esque talent with him. Fields would have time to develop, unlike Lawrence and unlike Wilson if they go 1-2 to Jacksonville and New York. Justin Fields will have time to develop, he will have time to sit, he will have time to learn everything, to adjust to life in the NFL, adjust to life in the new city. And you know what? That's going to be great for his future and his present right now. Just saying that those players are able to learn, develop, and craft their skills from veterans is such a crucial aspect to be able to perform at the highest level, which most fans want them to be. We as NFL fans have to take knowledge and have to take into account that these guys are 19, 20, and 21-year-old kids. They're kids. They haven't been able to experience what life is like in the NFL. They may think they know, but they don't know. If NFL franchises don't give these kids coming in the draft, specifically quarterbacks, if they don't give them time to develop, they're not going to be able to produce down the line. It's highly unlikely that a QB coming in at 19, 20, or 21 years old will be able to lead their team to a winning record. They won't be able to lead their teams to the Super Bowl because they're thrown in the fire and they're not going to be able to learn. These guys have to be able to develop. Patience is a virtue in life, and patience is a virtue when it comes to the NFL. You see guys like Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and Tom Brady, like I mentioned before, they developed, they learned from the best. Aaron Rodgers learned from Brett Favre. Patrick Mahomes learned from Alex Smith. They learned from guys who were experienced, who were knowledgeable, and who were wise beyond their years. They weren't thrown into the fire. You see guys like Sam Darnold. He was thrown into the fire, and he was ran out of town in New York. It's easier said than done, though. It's easier said than done to say, all right, we're going to take a guy and we're going to develop him. Fans don't like to hear that. Fans want to win now. But you know what? A young QB is like having a young pup or a young kitty. You know, when you have that first young kitty, it's a lot of responsibility. You got to feed it. You got to take care of it. You got to train it. You got to make sure it's healthy. You got to make sure it's not tearing up the whole house. You got to make sure it's properly potty trained. And that's the same thing with a young quarterback. You have to make sure that they know the system, that they know where to be. Because honestly, going from college to the NFL is a major culture shock because it's a new environment, it's a new atmosphere, and the players on the field are bigger, they're faster, and they're stronger, and they're probably smarter. And that's why you have to develop, because if you throw a quarterback into the fire the first day and say, all right, go win us a Super Bowl, that's not going to happen. You're setting them up for failure. So I think we need to pump the brakes on, oh, we're going to draft the number one pick and he's going to be the savior. Okay, he might be, but that's a slim chance. And we have to remember that these kids are coming out of college and they're young. And honestly, drafting anybody, whether it's a QB, a running back, or even any other sport, whether it's NBA, MLB, NHL, or even NFL, it's going to be a gamble when it comes to the draft. But where it pays off in the long run is if you can get the right guy in your system that you believe, who you can give your core values to and have them develop and have them learn and have them grow as not only a player but a person. But you never know what you're going to get, and that's why it's a gamble. It just goes to show that the draft in any sport, whether it's NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, it's a gamble because you have no idea what's going to happen. You just know that these guys are talented, but you don't know how they're going to be in the long run, and that's what the great thing is about sports. So, if you're excited about the NFL draft coming up and you want more draft talk, then this is the place to be. We got more draft talk coming up on the other side. We're going to talk everything about the hidden gems in the later rounds and all these other quarterbacks and wide receivers and who's going to be great and who's not going to be great. We're going to be talking about that coming up on the other side. It's the GSMC Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. Stay tuned.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Hey now, welcome back. Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm Bryan back with you again. Glad you can be here with us. Okay, in the previous segment, we talked about the 2021 upcoming NFL Draft. It's Thursday, people. We got a whole 3 days, and it's going to be crazy. There's going to be so many big news and so many big moves being made. It's going to be a hopeful day for a lot of franchises and a lot of fans. It's also going to be a very hopeful day for a lot of players and a lot of these players' families. Dreams are going to be made a reality this day, and it's going to be exciting. But later on in the show, I'll give you my reasons why getting fans back in the stands and getting the NFL back to normal is going to be great for not only the teams, but the players, the games, and the overall community of the NFL. It's going to be great. But like I teased before the break, we're going to continue talking about the NFL draft coming up on Thursday. Like I mentioned before, the draft is a gamble. You never know what you're going to get, and that's what makes it such a gamble. There's some players who do pan out and who become superstars, and there's some players who just don't pan out, and we call those busts. There's some players who are just going to be busts in the NFL. Some top picks, they can be overrated too, and they're also gems in the later rounds that a lot of people miss on the first time and the second time. But like I said before, the draft is a gamble. GMs don't really know if the guy they select is going to be great, is he going to be a superstar, or is he going to be an average player to a bust? They don't know. And there's so much to take into account if you're a general manager when drafting a player. You have to take into the position they play. how old they are, their age, their height, their weight. People look at hand size. People look at 40 times. People look at agility times. And they have so much information at their hands and at their fingertips that they have to take into account. Their personality. How is their intangibles? What's their personality like? How are they like with their family? How's their lifestyle? What are their core values? These are the questions that GMs are going to be asking themselves all throughout this process and all throughout the end of the draft and going on throughout their years. At the end of the day, GMs look for if they're a fit to the system. If these players are a fit to the system. When I talk about quarterback, can they snap under the center? Can they take a West Coast offense? And can they drive and lead a team not only down the field, but in the future and through tough situations and tough battles? And can they just lead the team as a whole? I'm talking about running back. Can they do the zone read? Can they block? Can they catch? When I talk about defense, when I talk about the middle linebacker, can they lead a team? Because the middle linebacker is specifically the quarterback. Can the middle linebacker lead the team on defense? Are they smart? Can they adjust on the fly? Can they lead a team, and can they get the play calls out? And especially when they're in different situations and it's very emotional, and can they block out all the noise? I look at a defensive end or a defensive lineman. Can they play in a wild nine? Is the guy a defensive end, a defensive lineman? Is he a 4-3 guy? Is he a 3-4 guy? When I talk about 4-3 and 3-4, I talk about the defensive lines. Is he going to thrive with 3 people on the defensive line and 4 linebackers behind him? Or is he going to thrive with 4 people on the defensive line and 3 guys behind him in linebacker positions? These are all questions you have to ask yourself that are going to happen on the field, and they're going to happen off the field too. And people need to know and need to understand that these questions are going to be asked during these interview processes, during the pre-draft workouts, during the combines, and during the draft itself. Before the night before the draft, they can ask them, okay, we might draft you here at this position. If you're here, are you going to be our guy? At the end of the day, general managers look for one thing and one thing only. This is the question that if I were a general manager, I would ask hands down the only question. Just get me in a room with those people, and I would say, okay, here's the question I want to know. Are you a football guy? What does that mean? That means, do you love football? Are you the first one in the building and the last one to leave? Do you truly love the game? Do you truly love going to spring workouts, organized team activities, OTAs? And do you truly love to spend time with the guys, to commit to the craft? Do you truly love the game of football? Are you the one who says, oh, I love the game of football and I love to get hit by a middle linebacker if I'm a quarterback, or I love to throw a block if I'm a lineman, and not just get rewarded and not be able to get all the credit or get all the shine that everybody gets at different positions? But are you able to say, you know what, I love to put my hand in the dirt, I love to go compete, and I love to show effort and hustle? Are you one of those guys? That is what I would ask one person. Every person, that is what I would ask those players. If I'm going to draft you, I want to know if you're a football guy. Because if you're not a football guy, if you're just here for a paycheck, then you're not going to help me win as a franchise, and you're not going to help our team win as a franchise as a whole. So that is the one question I would ask these people, these players. Okay, coming out, I know you have the skills, I know you have the talents, I know you have the mental attitude, but are you a football guy? Do you love the game of football, or are you just here to, have the fame and get the paycheck? Getting back to what I said earlier, that stat that I mentioned about the 44 quarterbacks getting drafted in the top 3 in the last 50 years in the NFL draft, and only 2 have won Super Bowls with the team that's drafted them, that's crazy. And honestly, talking about the draft, we can look to history. We can look to history that's shown GMs have to be very cautious when a QB is drafted in the first round, especially if it's in the top 3. I say the draft is a gamble because of that stat right there. You're telling me out of the guys who were drafted top 3 quarterbacks in the last 50 years, 44 quarterbacks have been drafted in the top 3, and only 2 of them panned out to win a Super Bowl with their respected teams that they drafted? That's crazy. Now, with the draft, there's gambles. For every Peyton Manning and Troy Aikman, there's a Jamarcus Russell, and there's a Ryan Leaf. Busts happen in sports. Not everybody pans out. People don't always pan out. People are human. They're not perfect. They're not going to be the superstar that we want them to be. They just don't have it. And you know what? That's okay. Now, talking about busts, talking about people who don't pan out, NBC Sports Washington had a really interesting article on draft day. They had a really interesting article on draft day and draft day busts. Sometimes guys just don't pan out. It happens. It's a part of life. You just don't pan out, and it's reasonable and it's realistic. There's a lot of pressure that is put on these guys, especially the quarterbacks. Sometimes there's too much media pressure. Sometimes they can't live up to their hype. Sometimes they just can't. When the bright lights of the big city shine the brightest, they can't produce. And it's not their fault. Sometimes it's not their fault. Sometimes it's out of their control. Sometimes the team that they are drafted to is just not good, plain and simple. Sometimes they're in a bad situation. So, example, I look at the New York Jets this time. The New York Jets have the second pick overall. They might draft Zach Wilson out of BYU. He's an undersized quarterback who's got some skill, who's got some talent, and he needs to be put in the right system. If the Jets take him at number 2, he might be the next bust. He might be the next biggest bust because, A, they don't have the system there that can surround a young quarterback that will be healthy for him, that will get him to where he wants to go, and they just don't have the players around him. NFL fans have to look at the history. There are tons of guys who are in the same situation that these players are in the 2020 upcoming NFL draft, and we have to look at history. I look at history and I see Ryan Leaf, Chargers quarterback. He had a touchdown to interception ratio of 14 to 36. He threw every 14 touchdowns he threw 36 interceptions. Now, he will forever be a bust because he will always be linked to Peyton Manning. He will always be linked to one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And he will always be linked to him because he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and he was taken just after him, the number 2 position, and he never lived up to the hype. Now, it's not only quarterbacks. You also have running backs, too. You also have guys like Bryan Bosworth, who got drafted from Seattle. We all know him from his great hair. We all know him from the great college career at Oklahoma, but he just never panned out because people were bigger, they were faster, and they were stronger in the NFL. And in college, he would just go out and bulldoze everybody in his way and basically manhandle them, and they couldn't do that in the NFL because players are bigger, players are faster, players are stronger. Going back to the quarterbacks, you got Andre Ward from Detroit. He won a Heisman Trophy in 1988. He was the first black man to win he was the first African American to win the highest honor in the college football landscape, the Heisman. Everybody in college football dreams of winning the Heisman. In the NFL, he only played 14 games total. He only played 4 seasons in the NFL. That's how much pressure is on these guys. You can put so much anticipation into these guys of, oh, he won a Heisman Trophy, he's going to be great. No, that's not always happens. That doesn't always work. Speaking of expectations, we see a guy in the Bay Area. When I think of Jamarcus Russell, I think of, a guy who never panned out. But you know what? He was also a bust too. He was one of the biggest busts in NFL history. He had major weight problems. He had major injury issues. And he just had a flat-out lack of work ethic. He had a great pro day. He had a great career. And he basically finagled the Raiders to taking him over number 1 overall over Calvin Johnson, who's a Hall of Famer, who's a Hall of Fame wide receiver, and he finagled them basically just off his college and his pro day workouts. That's one of the biggest busts in NFL histories. It just goes to show that these guys in college who have great physical tangibles, who are great in college, who are Heisman Trophy winners, who are great and pro days, they don't always pan out, and we have to look at the history, and we have to be aware of it, and we have to understand what is happening. Now, those players who always get drafted high don't always pan out, like I said, and you can find guys in the later rounds. The great thing about the NFL draft is there are 7 rounds of 32 teams. There are 253 players total drafted. You have round 1 on Thursday, you have round 2 through 3 on Friday through Saturday, and you have rounds 4 through 7 on Sunday. You can find late round gems in the back end of the drafts. You don't have to find the superstar guy to find the generational talent in the first round. It's interesting. And another interesting stat that I've looked up, NCAA.com has an interesting stat about the draft. They estimated that 3.8% of draft eligible players who went D1 were chosen in the 2019 NFL Draft. So they saw 249 guys get drafted out of 6,490. Just think about that. 249 out of 6,490 Division I players. That's crazy. You're telling me out of 6,490 players, almost 6,500, only 249 were drafted? Less than 4%? That is crazy. That's so much pressure that you have to put on these young kids, and that there's so much pressure that sometimes people just don't pan out. To me, that stat is eye-opening. Another stat that is eye-opening is that they split this calculation into subdivisions. They said out of the estimated FBS players who were drafted, 238 out of 3,491 compared to the FCS players, 11 out of 2,999 players. Crazy. Just think about that. You're talking about slim chances, very slim chances. It just seems like the odds for these players and the odds for these players' families are stacked against their favor. It just doesn't happen. And it's tough. It's rough to find out that you're not going to go to the place you want to go to. But you know what? It's a harsh reality. But the other reality is you can find gems in the later rounds. You can find gems that are day 3 picks. Guys have to get an opportunity. I'm going to throw 3 names at you, and I want you to figure out what they have in common. Bo Jackson, George Kittle, Tom Brady, Dwight Clark. What do these guys have in common? Well, first of all, they're great football players. They're all Hall of Famers. They're Hall of Fame talent. But they were all late-round draft picks. They were all late-round gems. These guys weren't drafted in the top 2, 3 picks of their draft. They weren't. A prime example, everybody who knows football knows the name Tom Brady. He's arguably the greatest player of all time. If you're a sports fan, you know who Tom Brady is. If you don't, Tom Brady is the quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Originally, he played 20-plus seasons with the New England Patriots. He went to 10 Super Bowls. He won 7 of them. He won 7 out of 10 Super Bowls. He's got 5 Super Bowl MVPs. He won the Super Bowl last year at age 43 for Tampa Bay, the first year he went there. He was drafted in 2000. He was drafted 21 years ago, and he's still playing. And you have to think, those people who didn't know that, Tom Brady, he was a high draft pick, right? Wrong. He was not a high draft pick. He was drafted in the 6th round. He was a day 3 pick overall. Tom Brady was the 199th pick overall. He was scrawny. He was unathletic. He was a QB coming out of Michigan who had 0 potential. The Patriots took people before him before they took a flyer on him. I equate this to never being harsh to anybody. You remember when you went to school and you had friends and you had acquaintances, and sometimes friends would get picked on by bullies and stuff, and all kids have gone through this. All kids are ruthless. Kids have no filter, and there's cliques being formed in school. One of my biggest pet peeves in school and in life in general. But I always try to be nice to everybody, be respectful to everybody, be able to connect with people on a deeper level, and I always thought that making fun of people or starting in certain cliques, that wasn't the great way to make friends or make people happy. I always thought, you know what, it's time to be respectful. And I always tried to come off as nice and respectful for everybody. Not all kids were respected, and not all kids were nice to each other. I was like that because I didn't know what would happen if I was disrespectful to them, and 20 years down the line, I didn't know where they were going to be. It is a prime example of never judging a book by its cover. You have no idea what these people are going to turn out to be 20 years down the line. And it's a prime example everybody should realize and everybody should know. You have no idea that kid you picked on in 12th grade or that kid you picked on in middle school or elementary school. 20 years down the line, he might be a millionaire. She might be a millionaire. They might be the boss you have, and you just never know. And it's a prime example to never judge a book by its cover and always respect everybody. And general managers, fans of NFL football and any sport, they should have this figured out, because it's so easy to bypass. Oh, you can put a label on some guy and you can put a label on a player, but you don't know. We don't know. And that's how the draft in life is a gamble. You have no idea how these players are going to turn out. We can talk about it until the sun rises. We can talk about it all day long, but we have no idea until it physically pans out. People in the NFL didn't know that Tom Brady would turn out to win 7 Super Bowls, go to 10, have 5 Super Bowl MVPs, win 11 divisional championships, and arguably be one of the best players in NFL history. They had no idea what Tom Brady was like in his prime. But Tom Brady is a prime example of why there are late gems in the NFL draft. A couple late gems that I see, you see George Kittle, who's arguably one of the best tight ends in the league. When healthy, George Kittle is breaking records left and right. He's catching touchdown passes. He's blocking for his championship winning team. And he was found in the late rounds. And he's a late round gem, just like Tom Brady. And it just goes to show that out of the so many draft picks, the 253 draft picks that are getting drafted, sometimes those guys who are later round draft picks, or sometimes those guys who go undrafted, are better players overall in the NFL than those people who turn to a first round draft pick or a second round draft pick. So we just have to look at history. We have to look back at history, and we have to be able to understand and learn from our mistakes. There's a lot of GMs that probably told you, if you asked every GM back in 2000 if they knew that Tom Brady was going to be successful and Tom Brady was going to be the greatest of all time, they would tell you you're crazy. Back in 2000, if you gave them truth serum, they would tell you you're nuts. They had no idea who Tom Brady was, and now they're regretting it, and it just goes to show that the draft is a gamble in any sport: football, basketball, baseball, soccer, hockey. These GMs have no idea how these players are going to turn out. They just think, okay, they see the talent on the field and they think they can develop him. Fans don't know. You can do so many mock drafts. You can say, oh, I've seen this guy in person. His footwork is great as a QB, or he bench presses 450 pounds, but you have no idea when the biggest and brightest lights turn on and they actually have to prove it on the field. And we don't know. And that's why it's a gamble, and you're basically putting your life as a GM or as a football fan into their hands, and you're saying, go. We need you. We need you to produce, and you have no idea. But that's why we watch the games, because we are excited, and we love the game, and we love the process. Speaking of Tom Brady, he said something really interesting about the new rule changes in the NFL coming up this year. If you're a leatherhead, if you love football, if you want to hear these new rule changes, we'll have it for you on the other side. It's the GSMC Football Podcast. Bryan Iglesia with you. Stick around.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hey now, what's going on? Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Good. Now it's legal. Bryan here with you again. Glad you can be here. Glad you can be with us. Quick recap of what we did. We talked about in the previous segments all about the 2021 upcoming NFL Draft. We talked about the top QB prospects. We talked about how everyone is trying to figure out where these prospects are going. And we honestly think that the draft isn't going to start till 2 and 3 with the Jets and the 49ers. We also have to talk about the lying season that is the NFL draft season. People, put up your smokescreen detectors, because it's going to happen. You're going to get fooled with all these mock drafts all over the place. It's just lying season. People don't want to tip their hands and tip their cards. We've seen it plenty of times throughout history. We've also known that throughout history, especially in the NFL and other sports, that they can find late gems, late great talent in the later rounds. You don't always have to find a superstar talent in the first and second rounds. There are day 3 picks that you can get that are just as good and just might be superstar NFL talent. We've talked about it and history has shown it. But I digress. We are going to talk about the new rule changes in the NFL and how that's going to affect the NFL as a whole. We're going to talk about the number changes that's going to be happening. We're going to talk about the money that's going to be spent. And we're going to also talk about what the GOAT said about it. This next upcoming season, there's going to be a lot of change, and we've dealt with a lot of change throughout society as a whole. We've dealt with people getting vaccines. We've dealt with our society being shut down. We've dealt with the economy being at its all-time low, and we've dealt with the pandemic, and it's going to be changing, and we're going to deal with more change, but it's going to be good change, and it's going to be change for the good. Some people always think that change isn't good. I believe that change is always good, and it's going to be great for the sports world. It's great to see other sports like the NBA, like the MLB, getting back to having fans in stands and crowds again. It's great to see because fans in stands are what players want to have. Players need fans in stands to get them excited. They need large crowds. They just don't play in front of nobody. Because if they play in front of nobody, they just think it's a practice, a glorified practice that counts. With fans and stands, you're going to be able to feel that atmosphere. You're going to feel that energy. And sports as a whole is going to feel a lot more different, especially the NFL. It's going to be way different than last year. It's going to be way different because of the rule changes, and it's going to be way different because of the fans are getting back in stands. I read an interesting article on USA Today about how the new rule changes are going to affect the rules of the NFL. And the GOAT checked in, obviously, Tom Brady. We talked about it. We'll get to that. But first, NFL players, they're going to change some rules. And they already have. I think they already passed this. So it said NFL players could be changing their numbers with a lot more single-digit outfits potentially in high demand. So what does that mean? It means running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends will officially be allowed to wear any number from 1 to 49 and 80 to 89. More, defensive backs will now be allowed to wear 1 through 49, and linebackers are permitted to wear 1 through 59 and 90 through 99. That's a lot to take in. That's a lot to process. Now, it said one executive of football operations said it's going to be unorthodox to see. It's going to be unorthodox to see a linebacker wear a number in a single digit or a safety wear a single digit, but it's going to be fun for fans and it's going to be fun for players, and that's going to boost the morale and it's going to boost the energy of the NFL, and it's not going to make the NFL the not fun league anymore. It's going to make the NFL more fun, and it's a great way to get viewers, and the NFL is doing a great job. This USA article just highlighted basically the number changes, but they also went into the other rule changes. Like, for example, they're going to establish a maximum number of players in the setup zone on onside kick, and they're going to try it for a year. They're going to see how it goes. It may not work, it may be interesting, who knows. They're also going to permit replay officials and designate members of NFL officiating departments to provide objective information to on-field officials. So that's going to make the officiating just a little bit better and a little bit more consistent, because God knows every NFL fan, every sports fan says the officials are out to get us. We all say it, and we all think it's rigged, right? But that's not how it is. It's the officials are trying to do their job, and that rule right there states that they're trying to get it better. They're trying to make more of an impact, and they're trying to help out the officials even more. They also stated that they want to ensure enforcement of all accepted penalties committed by either team during successive try attempts. And they also want to have the loss of down in addition to a 5-yard loss or a legal forward pass. So that's going to be interesting too. So those are just some of the rules and regulations that the NFL is going to make as changes for this next upcoming season. But the big thing is the number changes. That's what we're talking about right now. And some big-time players are in favor of these rules and these number changes. Like superstar cornerbacks like Los Angeles Rams, Jalen Ramsey, and Los Angeles Chargers safety, Derwin James Jr. They love these changes because they give them more ability to be free. They give them more ability to express themselves. Another big-time player also chimed in, and he didn't like this. The player, Tom Brady. Like I mentioned before, the 7-time Super Bowl champion, arguably the greatest player of all time. It's arguably, but he might be it. He voiced his thoughts on social media, and guess what? He didn't like it. Here's what he said. He took a Snapchat of the rules on his phone. He posted it to his social media page, and he said, and I quote, "Good luck trying to block the right people now. Going to make for a lot of bad football." He also called it dumb. He said, why not just let linemen wear whatever they want? Why have numbers anymore? Why just let them wear different colored jerseys? It's going to make for a lot of bad football? I don't understand that. I don't know about you, but I don't understand that. Listen, I'm not the one who says, oh, you can't have an opinion. It's a free country. You can do whatever you want. You have the freedom of speech. You can say whatever is on your mind, no matter how dumb people think it is. It's a free country. But don't get upset when I disagree with your opinion. It's like that one person who says, oh, the sky isn't blue. It's like, what? What are you talking about? People get so upset when you have a difference of opinion. It's like when we're talking about quarterbacks in the NFL draft right now. People get so upset when they say, oh, you're going to draft Mac Jones at number 3 and you're not going to draft Trey Lance or Justin Fields. Are you an idiot? Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. And you know what? That's okay. Let me say that one more time. That's okay. It's okay to have a different opinion than someone else. It's okay. But the thing that's not okay is you bashing somebody else and disregarding them just because they have a stupid opinion. Just because they have an opinion that is not correct or not factually accurate or not your opinion. It doesn't make any sense. And honestly, we've become soft as a society when we don't express our opinions and we are scared to express our opinions. Nothing's going to happen if you express your opinions and over the keyboard or on your phone about Mac Jones being the number 1 quarterback in this draft or how the 49ers should draft Justin Fields instead of Trey Lance. Nothing's going to come of it. You might get bashed, you might get insulted here and there, but it's never going to affect you as much as it should to you should not be able to express your opinions and give a freedom of speech. But, Tom Brady's comments just had me feeling like, okay, the millennial in me seems like he's just the old man yelling, get off my lawn. What could be wrong? What could possibly go wrong with NFL players changing their numbers with a lot more single-digit outfits potentially in demand? I don't know what can go wrong. I really don't. It doesn't seem like an issue to me. It really doesn't seem like a problem. So what an NFL running back, a wide receiver, a tight end wants to be number 1 or number 5 or be a single-digit number or be a number between 1 and 49. And so what if a defensive back wants to wear the number 20 or if a linebacker wants to wear the number 2? Who cares? Who cares? You're a professional athlete. I don't understand how people on the field changing their numbers will be so bad for football. I just don't get it. He said changing numbers would be bad for the game. So what? So what? I say go ahead. It makes the NFL the not-for-fun league. The not-fun league, it makes them more fun. It's only a win-win-win for the NFL. I see it as a win-win-win because, A, you're going to bring more eyeballs, more storylines, more publicity to the games. It's going to bring more young viewers. We know the MLB, if you're a sports fan, the MLB has a hard time bringing in the younger demographic. This will engage the younger demographic, and it will make them want to watch more. And honestly, this will be more money in their pockets. The NFL is already the most popular sport in the United States. It's already king of professional sports in the United States. It would be great publicity, and it will be a great thing for the NFL, and it will make them even larger. It will make them even larger in the United States. Like every side, there's two sides to every argument. So let's look at Brady's argument. He doesn't like it. He thinks it's going to be bad for the game. Brady believes that these players changing numbers, specifically defensive backs and linebackers, will make it more confusing for other players like his teammates who are offensive line. Tom, come on now. We both know that's not true. You're a professional athlete. You have played football all your life. You've played football through Pee-wee, junior, high school, college, the NFL. You've adapted to different lifestyles and different ways to change the game. You're arguably one of the best players, the greatest players of all time. You might be the greatest player of all time. But I don't see why you're complaining about this. This only makes the game more fun, and this only makes the game better. Now, there are rules you have to abide by. You can't break the rules. You're not going to have linemen wearing a number that makes an eligible and single digit. You're not going to have a lineman wearing lower than 50. It's going to confuse a lot of people. It's going to confuse the ref. I understand that aspect. But it's not going to be a good look when you see a humongous human with a beer belly wearing number 5. It's just not going to be a good look. But I get the argument he's making. But everyone should have a fair argument, and everyone should be fair game. It's not going to be a bad look if a DB or a running back or a linebacker wants to wear a single digit. It's not going to be a bad work. It's going to be weird. It's going to be weird at first. It's going to be unorthodox. People are going to have to get used to it. But players are going to get confused on who to block. I don't buy that argument. I don't buy that argument at all. You're a professional athlete. You're a grown adult. You should know who's going to be blocking who. It's your job. You have your assignment. Your offensive lineman will not be confused. Your offensive lineman will not lose the sight of, this guy's this type of body shape, and just because he has a different number doesn't mean I'm not going to block him. He's right in front of me. If number 2 is stunting the A gap right in front of the center's not going to go let him walk by and sack the quarterback just because he's wearing a different number. He's not going to get confused. He's going to block that guy. These guys are grown men. They are smart grown men, and they will be able to do this. It's not going to be a bad look for the game. If anything, it's going to improve the game. It's going to improve the game, and you know what? It's going to make it more interesting. This new rule change is going to bring a whole lot of money and a whole lot of eyeballs, and that's exactly what the NFL wants. We have to remember, as much as the NFL is entertainment, as much as the NFL is my favorite team against your favorite team and it's competition, it's a business at the end of the day, and businesses only care about one thing and one thing only: cold hard cash. They only care about money. This is what will bring more money to their pockets. Now, the NFL is just going to be, the rich is just going to keep on getting richer. NFL is going to make a lot of money when it comes to this change. Now, you may be asking yourself, how is the NFL going to get even richer? They're already a $1 billion corporation. They already have so much money in their pockets, they have no idea what to do with it. Now, you may be asking yourself, how is the NFL going to get even richer? How are the rich going to get richer? Well, I'll tell you. Per Kevin Cypher, national writer for NFL for ESPN, and he stated something really interesting about the new rule of jerseys and jersey changes in the NFL. He stated, and I quote, "Based on pre-existing NFL rules, if a player wants to change numbers this upcoming season, he would have to buy out the existing inventory of jersey distributors. Otherwise, he'd give a notice to change his to change his number for the upcoming 2022 season. So I know that seems like a lot. I'll put it in layman terms. In ordinary people terms, if a player wants to change his number, he's going to have to either buy out the existing entire inventory of their jersey, or you can wait and you can change the number in the 2022 season. Simple as that. You're telling me a player is going to buy all their old jerseys if they want to change it this year? It's going to be interesting to see how many players want to change their jerseys this year right away. There's going to be a lot of money being spent by these players. Last time I checked, jerseys aren't cheap. They're expensive. They're super expensive. And there's different variations of every jersey. And you can tell me, yeah, these players who really want to change their jerseys, they're loaded. They sign $1 million contracts. But you know what? Those players who don't have $1 million contracts, who don't have the stability, who are living from game checks to game checks, there's going to be some players who aren't going to change their jerseys. And there's going to be some players like Tom Brady who don't like these rules and who are not going to abide by them. But there are also going to be some players who are going to have to get a new jersey and who really want that new jersey. And there's going to be some $100 handshakes between teammates this offseason too. Because everybody knows, if you know football, every skilled player will want to wear either the number 1, 2, 5, 7, or some jersey that someone else has, and their teammates have it, and there's going to be a lot of money spent because they're not going to give up their jersey because they're very superstitious and they love that number. They've had that number all their life. But there's going to be a lot of interesting handshakes and a lot of interesting stories through media and through this next upcoming season about the jersey changes. And I'm super excited because, first of all, it's not my money they're spending. And second of all, these rich athletes, they go through a lot. They go through a lot and they have a lot of money, and it's always fun seeing somebody else spend a buttload of money, and it's like, whoa, you spend $1 million just to have a number change? It's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see this upcoming season, all these people who want to change their numbers. And I don't think these people will want to change their numbers. I don't think these people will want to change their numbers as bad as we think they are. And who cares what Tom Brady says? I don't think that this rule is going to be bad for the game. All I see is more opportunity for fun, more opportunity for viewers, and more opportunity for money in the NFL's pocket. Because at the end of the day, like I stated earlier, NFL is a business. At the end of the day, it's a business. It's a corporation. They are trying to look for the best way they can make an honest dollar and make millions of dollars. And they have, by changing the rules and by tweaking the rules here and there. And it's going to be great for the game. It just is. And I'm excited to see it. It's going to be unorthodox. It's going to be weird at first. Like, you're going to see a linebacker like Fred Warner wear number 2, or you're going to see George Kittle wear number 5. But it's going to be different, and it's going to be interesting, and I'm all about change. Change isn't always the worst thing in the world. Some people say change is actually really good. Like this year, change with the fans, change with everything going on in our society. We've learned from change, and we've learned to adapt and overcome and become better from change. And I think this change will not only help the NFL in the long run, but it's going to help the NFL now with establishing more of a younger fan base. The NFL is doing a great job when it comes to the changes they are making to improve their game. Now, I know some people may complain about the rules and the officials, but these rules and regulations are here for a reason, and they care about the safety, and they care about their fans. And I think that these rules are basically making a great impact within the younger generation, and they're making a great impact to try to keep the younger generation involved. And by keeping the younger generation and the older generation and fans involved, it's going to make the NFL more fun and more interesting and more popular. It's going to be interesting to see what happens these next couple of days with the NFL draft and these next couple of years when it comes to fans and stands. And we're going to talk more about how the changes in the NFL when it comes to fans and stands and how the NFL can learn other sports, learn from other sports, will be great for fan activity and fan engagement, and just great for football and NFL as a whole. So if you love NFL football, if you can't wait for the draft, if you're going crazy trying to figure out who the 49ers are going to take or who the Jets are going to take at number 2 and number 3, you're going to want to stick around for this next segment coming up. It's the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm Bryan Iglesia. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hey now, welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Bryan Iglesia here with you again. Now, if you're just joining us, first of all, where have you been? Now, second of all, we've been talking all about football. We're talking all about the NFL draft. We're talking about the new rule changes that has happened within the NFL and how it's going to change and impact the game, not only for the good, but for the better. But like I teased earlier on the show, we're going to get into how the state of the NFL as a whole will change drastically. This year, we're finally going to be able to get fans back in the stands. It's great to see sports let fans back in the stands. It's great to see it in the Major League Baseball. It's great to see it in the NBA, in soccer, and soon in the NFL. And it's great to see it in the NHL too. So what does this mean for the NFL? Well, one of the greatest aspects of going to a live sporting event is having fans in the stands. Fans mean so much to players and to professional sports. Fans bring energy, fans bring passion, fans bring atmosphere, and players need fans. Players of any sport, I don't care if you're playing high school football, high school lacrosse, college soccer, players thrive off the energy and the roar of the crowd. It's just a great way to signify you're alive, and it's a great way to signify that you mean something and somebody's watching you and somebody's giving you energy and giving you that passion. Now, this past year was one of the most bizarre years in sports and in history in general. We've never been through this in my lifetime. We've never been through this COVID-19 pandemic before. It's been crazy. It just felt so weird to be sitting at home, especially as a sports fan, and watching sports without any fans. It felt like a major aspect of my life was missing. I don't know about you, but I know other sports fans that I've talked to said they were missing something too. They were missing something that was so precious to them. They're just things in life that are just meant to be for each other. Off the top of my head, peanut butter and jelly. That's meant to be together. They go together. A cold beverage on a humid, hot day. That's perfect. Bacon and eggs. Beer and pizza. Of course beer and pizza goes together. And cereal and milk. If you have cereal and milk, that just perfectly fit together. They're just things that go together. And that's the same with fans and sporting events. They just go together. And by the way, let me digress. Water doesn't mix with cereal and pineapple doesn't belong on pizza. I love pizza just as much as the next guy. I love cereal. I love having my Fruity Pebbles, and I love having my Cocoa Puffs. But water doesn't go in cereal, and I'm not trying to have water in my Fruity Pebbles. And first of all, pineapple doesn't go on pizza. Simple as that. It doesn't go on pizza. It doesn't. But I digress. The one thing that sports was missing last year was the fans in the stands. There's nothing like going to a live sporting event and feeling the atmosphere, feeling the energy, feeling the crowd, and players being enthused and players getting uplifted from the crowd. There's nothing like it. It's a way to escape from reality. It's a way to relax. It's a way to enjoy. And it's a way to be entertained. Fans need sports. And sports need the fans. Especially in the NFL. Especially in the National Football League. I heard a recent interesting article from The Insider. Scott Davis had a really good article on the impact of fans in the stands and fans in the NFL. They had a really great article about the lack of fans in the NFL from last season. Players really felt like they were playing a scrimmage, or they felt like they were playing in high school. These are professional athletes. They live to play in front of the fans. They have a dream of playing in front of packed houses. And last year basically wasn't what they hoped for and wasn't what they wanted to at all. NFL players had a lot to say about the lack of fans. One example is Jason McCourty told NBC's Peter King the atmosphere from the time we came out of the tunnel was unlike anything we've ever felt. That was New England Patriots cornerback. And Aaron Rodgers, one of the biggest names in the game, said, "You can't really envision what the NFL game is like without fans. This felt more like a high school or a scrimmage or a high school scrimmage or a college scrimmage, and maybe travel somewhere for a scrimmage and your parents just come out here, but no other fans." And New Orleans Saints tight end Jared Cook, he said it was difficult for him. He said pretty much the whole game they were on the sideline trying to talk about how things were different. And he tried to pump the sideline up and tried to be able to get their teammates going. But something was missing. Several players said it, and it was much different. And they tried to muster up the energy without the audience, but they couldn't. McCourty also told King, when you're in the stadium with no fans, no noise, you've got to bring your own energy for 3+ hours. You win, nobody to high five, no kid to throw your gloves to. You come to the realization that we're going to have to do a lot of this ourselves and generate a lot of energy that can't be generated. It can't be generated because it is energy that is only being generated from the fans. Fans bring a lot of energy and generate a lot of energy to the games. It just goes to show that players need the fans. Coaches need the fans in sports in general. I don't care if it's Major League Baseball. I don't care if it's National Hockey League. I don't care if it's the NCAA. They need fans. Sports need fans. And I can't wait to go back to live sporting events like we already are. With the world getting back to normal, the economy is opening up, and sport is getting back to normal. NFL needs to learn lessons and need to take notes from all these other sports when it comes to safely going back to live sporting events. Now, NFL already had fans in their sporting events. They had fans at the latest Super Bowl. But we see the NBA, the MLB, the NHL, and the MLS are all allowing fans back into the stands. They're doing it safely, some at 20%, some at 25%, some at 30%. And we're seeing different ways onto how to do it differently and how to do it safely and how to be able to make a revenue and make a profit off of it. Now, we already saw the NFL having stands filled in the Super Bowl with healthcare workers and with everybody trying to be safe and be cautious, but it wasn't really the best thing because it didn't really seem like a lot of people were social distancing. It didn't seem like a lot of people were wearing their masks, but it seemed like people were enjoying their times. But people have to understand that we're still in this. We are still trying to get through this crazy time, these unprecedented times. And I know everybody wants to get back to the way life ought to be, and everybody is optimistic right now. But we still have to push through. We still have to keep on wearing our mask every day. Another person who's very optimistic about everything that is happening and who's optimistic that fans will be back into stands in the NFL is NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. He is very optimistic, and he told Pro Football Focus, he told them that he wants to see packed houses. He wants to see stadiums filled for the 2021 upcoming season. I'm not sure if that's possible. I'm not sure. That's going to be a long battle, but it's optimistic, and it's fun to see. It's fun to hear that these people are optimistic. The NFL commissioner told Pro Football Focus that the league's goal and expectation is to welcome back fans across the country at all stadiums. He specifically said, all of us in the NFL want to see every one of our fans back. Football is simply not the same without the fans, and we want to expect to have the full stadiums packed to the brim in the 2021 season. I totally agree with him. Football is not the same without the fans, and no sport is the same without the fans. Fans bring the energy, fans bring the enthusiasm, and honestly, sports need fans for the revenue. Remember, sports is a business, and the fans thrive off sports, and sports thrives off the fans. It was really interesting to see on this article that they showed that the NFL attendance was 1.2 million in 2020, and it was a huge drop from the upwards of 16 million who attended NFL games in 2019. That's crazy. They went from 16 million fans in attendance in 2019 to 1.2 million in 2020. Whether the NFL gets a sellout crowds in every city in 2020 remains to see unseen. But with America, once paced and once able to get back to normal and have most adults fully vaccinated, the outlook is positive. The outlook is positive for a lot of people, especially sports fans, especially NFL fans. We already see it with the NBA. We already see it with the MLB. We already see it with the NHL. We already see it in most aspects of life. We're getting through this, and people are optimistic. But can it really happen? Can this dream of getting back to normal, will it really happen? And how realistically will it happen? I believe it can. Yes, I think it can happen if we keep wearing masks, if we keep getting vaccinated, if we keep staying the course. We can get back to having a packed house and filled stadiums in sports again. We've come so far as a society, we can push through. We are already seeing a lot of change happening within the sports world and within society as well. We've already seen a lot of people and a lot of things happen that's changed over the year. The NFL draft, for example. We are seeing how the NFL draft is going to be different this year. It's going to be live. Now, a great story from Sports Illustrated states that players will be able to be in person this year. The NFL draft is in Cleveland, Ohio this year, April 29th, this Thursday. And they say that 13 players are going to be able to be in the draft. Players expected to be in the draft from Northeast Ohio are as followed: Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Kyle Pitts, and Patrick Surtain. But they're allowing 13 people in the draft. This year, Roger Goodell is vaccinated and he's ready to go. I believe he can give handshakes, high fives, and hugs. That is a huge accomplishment. That is a huge accomplishment from where we were once in 2019 from where we are now in 2021. It's huge for people to get back to live sporting events and be able to experience a human interaction in sports. Now, I'm not saying that what we came through and what we experienced in 2020 when it comes to the virtual draft, I thought that was a great experience. I thought it was awesome to look inside the little war rooms of each one of these GMs that were drafting and look inside their homes and see how they were set up and how they were able to decipher which guy they wanted. And it kind of gave me a little glimpse of what it was like being inside their war room, and it was great ratings for the NFL. We were starving as fans for any type of sports, and the NFL draft was truly the one thing that kept us afloat during that time of struggle, during that time of loss, during that time of not having any live sports. And it was a great idea, and I just want to say hats off to NFL. You did it. It was great. And honestly, if we have to go back, I believe that that is a great way you can produce a profit and produce eyeballs and get more eyeballs onto your sport in general. But we have the draft coming up, and we have the draft coming up live in person. With an expected quarterback run early, there will be 3 quarterbacks walking across the stage in the first round. Like I stated before, 13 players is not that high of a number when it comes to the 253 players drafted in all throughout the draft this weekend when it comes to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's not a lot of people, but it's still progress. Now, many prospects rather take in the life-changing moment surrounded by their family, friends, coaches, and it's understandable. People don't want to get sick. There's a deadly virus out there that we're still trying to battle. It's understandable. But with COVID-19 still around, the number of draft picks actually attending in person was going to be low. It's just going to be. The NFL was able to get 13 big names in person. These are pretty much the 13 biggest and brightest names in this draft. So a little less than half of the first-round picks shake Roger Goodell's hand, hug him, or give him a dab or a fist bump. But it's just progress, and it's great to see as sports fans that people are getting back to live sporting events. And this just shows how the NFL draft is leading the way and how the NFL is a behemoth when it comes to leading the way of safety and leading the way of innovation for the league and for professional sports. Now, I know a lot of people love to bash on the NFL. A lot of people love to bash on, the only thing they care about is money. They don't care about the health. They don't care about the well-being of their players. Most of these owners don't really care about their players and don't really care about the well-being of their players. But honestly, I think throughout this whole 2021 pandemic and this whole COVID-19 issue, I think owners are being more sympathetic and more relatable and more empathetic to their players and to their fans. And I think this is a great change because not only are we getting fans back in the stands, but we're also getting the community back together. Getting fans back in the stands is not only great for the players and the people going to the games, but it's also great for the community. It's also great for these teams and these people who work for these teams who are not on the field of play. We see that these stadiums employ millions of people, and it's going to bring millions of jobs back. And that is going to affect our community and bring a nice sense of calmness and normalcy back to our community that we've been lacking through the last year. It's going to bring millions of people back to jobs, and it's going to be able to boost our economy, and it's going to make life as we knew it, life as we once knew, back to normal. It's going to be able to get the cashier working at the concession stands a job again. One of my favorite memories when it comes to live sporting events was just before the pandemic happened. I remember I was working at Levi Stadium. I was there for the NFC Championship game, and I just felt a sense of community. It was the NFC Championship game. It was against the Green Bay Packers, and it was a great atmosphere to be a part of because the place was packed. The energy was flowing. The fans in the stands were bringing their atmosphere and bringing their energy, and the atmosphere was electric. It was basically, their atmosphere was infectious. Like, I remember one of my greatest memories. This is why I love sports. One of my greatest memories is high-fiving people on the side of the street when I was outside of the stadium. I think it was probably like 15 to 20 people, random strangers. I was high-fiving and celebrating a historical moment in NFL history when Raheem Mostert scored his 4th touchdown in the NFC Championship to send the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl in 2019. That I will always remember. I will never forget, because that's why we come to the games. That's why we go, and that's why we love sports. For the community, for the camaraderie, for the sense of uniqueness and the sense of atmosphere and the sense of, okay, we know that something great is going to happen today. We know when we step in those stands, when we sit down in those seats, we're going to see something that we've never seen before. And that's the thing I love. I love the uniqueness of sports. I love how every single day is a different day in sports and you never know what you're going to get. And I just love the aspect of being able to connect with people who I don't know, who are complete strangers, and being able to connect with them and bond with them on a deeper level about sports, about our love of sports, about our passion for sports, and being able to connect as a community, because that's all what it's about. It's all about connecting with other people and having fans back in the stands this year and having hopefully a packed house in the NFL and hopefully hearing the roar of the crowd, hopefully hearing the crack of the helmet and hearing people go crazy when somebody scores a touchdown or hearing somebody go crazy when somebody throws a pick and they are on their fantasy team. It's just the atmosphere and the electricity I miss it. I know a lot of you miss it out there too, but we just have to stay the course. We just have to keep doing what we're doing. It's going to get better. It already has been. We've already seen great strides. We've already seen great change within our economy and within our society and within sports as well. We've seen great change. We just have to keep on pushing. Now, I know these last 8 to 9 months, they've been difficult. I know a lot has been taken away from us. A lot of people have been taken away from us. These have been uncertain, unprecedented, and unpredictable times. But it's great to be getting back to normal. It's great to see people being optimistic and getting their shots and being hopeful that we can get out of this. It's great to see people being resilient. But we have to stay the course. We can't do this alone. Just like in any team sport, we need a team effort. We need everybody. So continue to doing the right thing. Continue to stay informed. Continue to be aware. Continue to be safe. We can do this. We can get back to normal. We can go back to having packed houses and live sporting events. We can go back to high-fiving people on the street like we once did and once knew and once loved back before this whole thing started. We can once again see friends and see family at live sporting events and not be worried if we have a deadly virus. We can once again get back to watching live NFL football and live college football again. If we can get through this together, we can get back to the things we know and love. Well, that's all the time I got. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you to please remember to subscribe to the show and write a really nice review. That really helps us out. And also, if you can please follow us on our social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you. I'm Bryan Iglesia. Be well, be safe, and we'll see you on the other side.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.